My name is Ryan. I am 23 years old, and I want to tell you about a Tinder match who turned out to be the same person twice. He found my phone number after I blocked him, then he found my new number, then he got into my Facebook, and one day I came home to find my apartment door unlocked and my windows open with nobody inside. Subscribe before we get into this. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, because I have two stories tonight about what happens when someone online decides they are not done with you yet. Let me start with mine. In the spring of 2014, I was using Tinder the way most people use it, casually a few minutes here and there, swiping through profiles without any strong attachment to the outcome. I matched with a girl who seemed cool and easy to talk to. We had good conversation for about a week. She suggested meeting up at a coffee shop in town, and I agreed. The morning of the meetup, she sent me a message telling me she had something to tell me. She said the photos on her profile were not actually her. She said she was a man. He said he had genuinely enjoyed our conversations and wanted to know if I would still meet up with him. I said no, blocked the profile, and moved on. About a week later, I matched with someone else. Different name, different photos, similar vibe. Easy to talk to, similar sense of humor, conversation flowed. We hit it off quickly. At some point early on, she asked me whether I talked to a lot of people on Tinder or had had any strange experiences on there. I told her about the previous situation with the catfish. Looking back, I understand how much information I was handing over. Weeks later, I figured out that this second profile was the same person. The clues accumulated retroactively rather than in the moment. Certain phrasing patterns I had not noticed at the time. The specific way certain questions were asked. The timing of responses. When I put it together, I felt the specific cold clarity of realizing something you should have seen earlier. We had agreed to meet at a cafe in town. I arrived and sat at a table by the window and waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. Nobody who matched the profile photos came through the door. Then I looked across the street. A man was standing on the opposite sidewalk looking directly at me through the cafe window. Not glancing over, looking. Sustained and unmoving, the kind of eye contact that communicates purpose. I looked away, counted to 10, looked back. He was still there. I got up, walked out the side entrance of the cafe, got on my bike, and rode home without looking back. I deleted my Tinder profile that evening and told myself it was finished. About 3 weeks later, my phone started ringing from unknown numbers. I answered the first few. Nobody spoke, just breathing on the other end of the line. Heavy and deliberate enough that it was not a missed dial or a pocket call. I stopped answering calls from numbers I did not recognize. Then the texts started. Early ones were requests for attention. Please answer. I just want to talk. Then they escalated towards sexual content. Then they changed again into something more specific and more frightening. He was using names, not mine. The names of people in my life, my friends. People I had never mentioned. He was describing their routines, their locations, things they had done recently. He said he would involve them unless I responded. I called my phone provider. They told me the number appeared to be a prepaid device with no registered owner. Untraceable. I waited 2 weeks without responding, hoping the silence would end it. Instead, the volume increased. 50 texts in a day, sometimes more. I would wake up to 15 or 20 messages waiting. I changed my phone number. The calls and texts stopped. Then they started again. He had my new number within a couple of weeks. My phone provider confirmed they had not released it to anyone. They walked me through their policy. A new number is not disclosed without valid identification. I did not know then how he had gotten it. I still do not know for certain now. Then I was locked out of my Facebook account. My friends started reaching out, asking what was happening. Someone was sending messages from my account to people I cared about. One of my closest friends received messages about her mother, who had died several years earlier. The content of those messages was targeted and cruel in a way that required knowing the specific details of her grief. This was not a random attack. Someone had read through my private conversations and extracted personal information about the people I loved and was using it as a weapon. I contacted Facebook and eventually recovered the account. I deactivated it immediately. I contacted the FBI. I gave them everything I had: transcripts of messages, records of call attempts, the Facebook incident. They listened and documented everything and told me that because neither I nor anyone close to me faced immediate physical danger, their capacity to intervene was limited. I sat with that information and tried to figure out what to do with it. I decided to wait. About 6 months into all of this, I came home to something I cannot fully explain. My front door was unlocked. I was certain I had locked it that morning. My windows were open. I lived alone, and my roommates were not home. I walked through the apartment carefully and found nothing missing. Nothing moved, no one inside. Nothing except the unlocked door and the open windows. I locked everything and sat on my couch and waited for my roommates to come home and did not sleep well that night. The messages tapered off over the following weeks. 7 months in, I was receiving 1 or 2 texts every couple of weeks rather than dozens a day. The calls became infrequent, then they stopped. I never identified him with certainty. I have my strong suspicions based on timing and detail and the specific information that appeared in the messages, but I have no proof and no resolution. I moved at the end of that year, new city, fresh start. I do not use dating apps anymore. The part that stayed with me was not the peak of it, the 100 texts a day, the locked out Facebook. It was the open windows, coming home to an apartment that I had left secured and finding it open and having no explanation for it. The possibility that someone had been inside. The impossibility of proving they had or had not. I checked my windows every day for months after that, both before I left and when I came home. I still do it now without thinking. It became automatic in the way that certain fears do once they find a foothold. The second story. My name is Brian. I am 25 years old, and I want to tell you about Trent. I met him on Grindr in the fall of 2014. He was my type, and the conversation was easy, and the first couple of months were genuinely good. I had no particular reason to anticipate what was coming. The first sign of the real situation came at the end of the semester, when my roommates moved out and he came to stay with me over winter break. When I mentioned wanting to spend more time with my family for the holidays, he told me he could not go home. He had cut off contact with his family entirely. He did not give me details that felt complete or consistent. The story shifted slightly each time I tried to understand it. I decided I was going to help him find somewhere to stay and then end the relationship. I did not want to make him homeless. I thought I was being decent. That was the beginning of a longer situation than I had anticipated. He enrolled at my university the following semester and was placed in the room directly across the hall from mine. I understand now how I was moved into a position where the logistics of ending things had become complicated. At the time, I was still thinking of it as a practical problem rather than a pattern. When the new semester began, he started coming to my room saying he could not sleep. He said he was afraid his roommates were going to kill him. I told him that sounded like anxiety talking and encouraged him to go back to his room. Not an hour later, he came back threatening to end his life. I took him to the hospital. The night was long and exhausting and genuinely frightening in the way that a person in crisis is frightening because you cannot always tell what is performance and what is real, and the consequences of guessing wrong are severe. When it was over and I had been awake for most of a night watching someone I cared about in a state of acute distress, I did not break up with him. I could not. I want to be honest about that. I stayed because I was afraid. Not afraid of him in that moment, but afraid that leaving would cause him to harm himself, and that harm would be something I had caused. That is a specific kind of trap. It looks from the outside like a choice, but it does not feel like one from inside it. I changed my number. I blocked him across every platform I used. He created a new account and found a way back in. I eventually agreed to meet him because I thought a conversation in a public place was manageable. I ended up taking him back because the alternative felt like something I could not live with. This continued. He moved off campus into an apartment he could not afford. The apartment became somewhere he could not stay because he could not tolerate being alone there without becoming a crisis. My apartment was where he spent most of his time. I was in a relationship I had not chosen and could not leave by conventional means because every attempt to leave produced a crisis that I would be called to manage. One night I decided I was done. I told him I was ending it. What followed was an hour of him on one side and me on the other, me begging him not to hurt himself, and him using that against me in real time, asking me to leave so he could do what he was threatening to do. It culminated in him threatening to call the police and report me for threatening him in his own space. I left. I called the police myself. When they arrived, they found him attempting to cause an explosion in his apartment. After he was released, the real stalking began. Up to 50 calls a day from numbers that changed as fast as I could block them. Multiple profiles on multiple platforms, all slightly different, all with enough recognizable detail that I knew it was him. Messages that were not quite threats, but communicated with absolute clarity that he intended to find me alone in a room. The phrase he kept using was something like, come out wherever you are. The entire sustained effort was oriented toward getting me into a private space with him. I left my apartment and moved in with my aunt 20 miles away. One evening, I received a call from the police department telling me my apartment had been broken into and I needed to come assess what was missing. I drove back through a severe lightning storm with a friend and a baseball bat. When I opened the door, nothing was missing, but things were there that had not been there before. I opened my bedroom door and found his phone on my charger. My bed had been stripped. His clothes were folded by the window. I knew before I turned around. He was in my closet, crouched in the dark. He came out slowly, unhurried, as if this were a reasonable place to be found. He was barely dressed. His eyes had the particular quality of someone who has gone past exhaustion into something else. He asked me to kill him. He tried to take the bat from me. He claimed he had given me a disease. He tried to argue that he legally resided in my apartment. I got him into the living room and got him dressed before the police arrived. The arrest that followed was the most violent thing I have witnessed in person. Nothing they used to subdue him worked quickly. He kept calling my name. He kept asking for 5 minutes alone with me. He posted bail. The stalking continued. I obtained a protective order. He violated it repeatedly. He found me in a class and chased me across campus. He attempted to re-enter my apartment a second time and was arrested again. He eventually moved to another state, apparently under the belief that a protective order does not follow across state lines. He is wrong about that. I finished the semester. I moved back home. I started reporting every violation of the order as it occurred, because I understood by then that documentation was the only currency that actually mattered in this situation. I want to describe something about that night in the apartment, the moment before I turned around and found him in the closet, standing in my own bedroom looking at the phone on the charger and the stripped bed and the folded clothes, and knowing with a certainty that arrived before I had finished processing what I was looking at, that he was already in the room with me. There is a particular quality to that kind of knowing. The moment just before confirmation, when your body understands something that your conscious mind is still catching up to. I have thought about it many times since. It is not something I would have been able to predict from the first conversation, or the second, or the first few months. The version of him I met on that app in October of 2014 was not the version in the closet. Or maybe it was, and the transformation was gradual enough that I could not see it happening. I do not know which of those is true. I am not sure it matters. 2 stories tonight. Ryan, whose unlocked windows and open doors still have no explanation, and me, who found someone in my closet who had gotten there by impersonating a police officer to get a locksmith to open my door. Both of these situations began with an app and a matching algorithm and a conversation that seemed normal at first. Both of them eventually produced a moment in an ordinary domestic space, an apartment, a bedroom, a living room, where the distance between ordinary life and something genuinely dangerous collapsed without warning. Ryan's situation never produced a face-to-face confrontation. He was never certain who he was dealing with. He changed his number and his city, and the contact eventually faded. Mine produced a man in a closet in a storm. A man I had met through a phone screen in October, become involved with, tried to leave, been prevented from leaving, tried to leave again, and ultimately found crouched in the dark of my own bedroom waiting. Dating apps connect you to people who are strangers. That is the entire model. The strangeness is part of the appeal. You meet someone you would not have met otherwise, and sometimes that produces something real and good. But the stranger who becomes someone you trust was a stranger first. And the things that made them a stranger, the absence of history, the absence of context, the absence of anyone who can tell you what they are like when things are difficult, those things do not disappear when you start trusting them. Ryan could not trace the calls. The windows were open when he came home. I found a phone on a charger that was not mine. Take time before you trust. Verify more than feels necessary. And pay attention to the things that do not quite add up early before the investment has grown large enough that the cost of paying attention feels too high. The open windows are a warning. So is the phone on the charger. So is the empty coffee shop and the man standing on the sidewalk outside. The warning is usually there before the situation becomes something you cannot leave.